The wind rattled the loose boards of the barn, carrying with it the bitter smell of hay, sweat, and fear. She stood in the center of the room, stripped of every shred of dignity by the people who were supposed to protect her. Her in-laws circled like carrion birds, their laughter sharp, each jeer slicing deeper than the cold night air against her bare skin. She tried to cover herself with trembling arms, but there was no shielding the shame. Memories of her late husband flared, his gentle touch, the promises he made before fever took him, and each recollection burned now as betrayal. These were his kin, the ones who had sworn family ties meant something. Now they spat on his memory while parading her humiliation. Her knees weakened, but rage simmered beneath the humiliation, fierce enough to keep her standing. Their voices rang in her ears, words of scorn, accusations that she was nothing but a burden, a body to be discarded once she'd outlived her usefulness. A tear slid down her cheek, hot and defiant, and that was when a shadow stretched long and dark across the barn floor. "Enough," a voice cut through, rough as gravel yet steady as iron. The laughter halted, replaced by a thick silence. The lone rancher stood in the doorway, the setting sun framing him like fire at his back. Dust clung to his coat, his boots carried miles of hard trail, and his eyes held the kind of weight only the land could carve into a man. He didn't move quick, didn't have to. His presence alone shifted the air. One of the men sneered, trying to recover the upper hand. "Ain't none of your concern, stranger. Best you turn around before you get yourself in trouble." The rancher's lips curved, not quite a smile, more a warning. "Looks to me like trouble's already here. And I don't take kindly to cowards tormenting a woman." His hand rested near his revolver, casual as a rattler coiled in the grass. They bristled, but the confidence in his voice unsettled them. He wasn't bluffing, every line of his body said he'd killed before and wouldn't think twice about doing it again. The woman stared at him, disbelief flooding her. Rescue had never seemed possible. And yet here he was, a man who didn't know her, stepping into fire without hesitation. "You think she's yours to take?" her brother-in-law barked, though the shake in his tone betrayed him. The rancher's gaze didn't flicker. He spoke slow, deliberate. "She's coming with me." The barn seemed to tighten around them, every breath suspended. No one moved. Then, with a fluid motion, he tossed his coat toward her. It landed across her shoulders, heavy, smelling of leather and smoke. She clutched it to her chest, swallowing a sob. For the first time that day, she felt covered. "You ain't walking out of here alive," one of the men spat, drawing steel. The rancher's revolver cleared leather before the words finished. He didn't fire, didn't need to. The speed of the draw spoke for itself. The metallic click echoed loud as thunder. His voice dropped, quiet but lethal. "Try me." The standoff broke in an instant. He stepped forward, forcing them back with the barrel's promise. She stumbled behind him, each step away from her tormentors pressing the truth into her heart. She was leaving with him. Whether she wanted to or not, her fate was tied to this stranger. They reached the horses tethered outside. He lifted her onto one with a strength that made resistance useless. The first bullet cracked the air. Dust exploded near the horse's hooves. Another shot rang out, wild and vengeful. She clung to him as he swung into the saddle, his body a shield, his arm iron around her waist. The horses bolted, hooves drumming across the dry earth. Gunfire echoed, a chaotic chorus, but the distance grew with every pounding stride. She pressed her face against his back, the smell of sweat and dust grounding her in the storm of fear. A shot cracked. The horse bucked. She clung tighter. The rhythm of pursuit hammered into her skull. Every sound, every ricochet of lead, promised an end she wasn't ready to face. Her breath came fast, sharp. And yet, through the chaos, she heard his voice, steady, almost amused. "Hope you ride better than you scream," he muttered, guiding the horse through a gully. It startled her into a gasp that might have been a laugh if her throat weren't raw with terror. Somehow, in the madness of escape, he found room for humor. She held on tighter, not just from fear, but because the flicker of warmth his words sparked inside her was the first she had felt in months. The homestead shrank behind them, swallowed by the desert. Dusk bled into night, stars pricking holes in the dark sky. When the last echo of gunfire faded, only the sound of wind and hooves remained. She realized then she was crying, not from fear, but release. They slowed only when the horses trembled with exhaustion. He swung down first, steadying her as he lowered her from the saddle. Her legs buckled, and he caught her, the contact brief but firm, grounding her before letting go. Without a word, he led her to a rocky rise where the land fell away into shadow. From there, The world stretched endless and unforgiving. "Why?" she whispered, her voice fragile in the silence. "Why would you help me?" He busied himself with the fire, striking flint until sparks caught the dry brush. The flames grew, painting his face in shades of amber and shadow. He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, as though weighed down by something she couldn't name. "Couldn't stand by," he said simply. "Seen too much of that already." She studied him, the set of his jaw, the lines around his eyes. He looked like a man carved out of hardship, but there was something in his silence that made her think he carried wounds as deep as hers. The fire crackled between them, and she drew his coat tighter, the fabric swallowing her small frame. For the first time since her husband's death, warmth seeped into her bones, not just from the fire, but from the knowledge that someone, a stranger, had chosen to stand between her and ruin. Coyotes howled in the distance, their cries long and mournful. She shivered, and his eyes flicked toward the darkness beyond the firelight, hand never straying far from his revolver. He didn't speak again, and she didn't press him. Words weren't needed. But as she lay curled near the flames, exhaustion pulling her under, a thought flickered at the edge of her consciousness, stubborn and unyielding. She was not safe yet. Shadows still followed. And the story with this man, this rancher who had claimed her fate with 6 words, was only beginning. Sleep came heavy, but even in dreams, she heard his voice, steady and certain, "You're coming with me." The dawn crept slow across the desert, painting the mesas in bruised purples and blood-orange fire. She stirred from uneasy sleep, the embers of the campfire still glowing faintly. The rancher was already awake, crouched low, his eyes fixed on the horizon. His stillness told her more than words, the danger hadn't passed. She followed his gaze and felt her stomach tighten. Far off, specks of riders moved against the rise of morning light. Her in-laws had not given up, vengeance rode with them. She wrapped his coat tighter, suddenly aware of how little shield she had against what hunted her. He caught her glance, his voice low but unyielding. "They're coming. We move." No time for questions. He packed their few belongings with swift precision, his movements practiced, efficient. She mounted the horse with clumsy urgency, her muscles still sore from the previous night's flight. The rancher swung up behind her, reins in one hand, rifle in the other. They rode hard. The desert yawned before them, endless stretches of sand, cacti jutting like silent sentinels, vultures circling overhead as if waiting for failure. Hoofbeats thundered across the hardpan, but in the back of her mind, she could still hear the ones chasing them, closer with every heartbeat. The rancher leaned close, his words cutting through the wind. "Fear'll get you killed quicker than a bullet. Keep your head straight." She swallowed hard. Her hands clenched the saddle horn, her jaw tight. Fear clung to her like a second skin, but his words planted a spark. She wasn't dead yet. A canyon opened ahead, walls rising jagged and red as though the earth itself had split in anger. They plunged into the narrow pass, the echo of their horses' hooves bouncing back in dissonant rhythm. The walls closed in tight, and the shadows stretched long. It felt like a trap. The riders behind had grown louder, their shouts ricocheting through the rock. Panic surged, but the rancher's grip on her shoulder steadied her. He guided the horse deeper into the canyon until, suddenly, he pulled the reins sharp and stopped. "Off," he ordered. She slid down, knees buckling against the gravel. He dismounted next, thrusting the reins into her hands. His revolver gleamed in one hand, rifle slung across his back. His eyes scanned the ridges above, calculating, waiting. What do we do?" she stammered. His gaze cut to hers, hard but not unkind. "We fight." The words froze her blood, but before she could protest, the first shot rang out. Sparks leapt from the canyon wall inches from her head. She screamed, dropped to the ground. The rancher's revolver barked in answer, sharp and deafening. Chaos erupted. Shouts, gunfire, the screech of horses rearing. Dust billowed thick, choking the air. The rancher moved with deadly precision, each shot measured, each movement purposeful. He seemed born of the gun, every muscle tuned for survival. She cowered against the rocks, heart hammering so violently she thought it would break free. But then she saw him stumble as a bullet grazed his arm. His jaw clenched, but his rhythm faltered for an instant. A rider closed in from the flank, weapon raised. Without thinking, she snatched a rock from the ground and hurled it. It struck the rider square on the temple. He reeled, gun flying from his hand. The rancher finished him with a single shot. Breathless, she stared at her trembling hands, stunned at what she'd done. The rancher glanced back, a flicker of something, surprise, approval, flashing in his eyes. "Not bad," he muttered before turning back to the fight. The canyon grew silent, one body at a time dropping until only the wind moved through the stone. Smoke drifted, acrid and heavy. Horses bolted riderless into the distance. The rancher lowered his revolver, chest rising and falling in controlled breaths. She stood slowly, her knees weak but her spirit strangely stronger. For the first time since her nightmare began, she felt the stirrings of power in her own blood. She had acted. She had survived. His eyes met hers, and though his face betrayed little, his nod said what words didn't: "You're stronger than you think." They left the canyon behind, the sun now high and merciless. By midday, they stumbled upon an abandoned shack, little more than rotting timbers clinging to each other above a collapsed mine shaft. The rancher pushed the door open with his boot, checked inside, then gestured her in. It was shelter, nothing more. The air stank of dust and old wood, but it was quiet. Safe enough. Her body sagged against the wall as exhaustion took her. Yet the silence brought no peace. Tears welled, spilling unchecked down her cheeks. "They took everything from me," she whispered. "My husband. My home. Even my pride." The rancher crouched before her, his face shadowed but intent. His voice was calm, steady as stone. "No. They didn't take you. You're still here." His words cracked something open inside her. The grief, the rage, the shame, all surged, then drained, leaving a hollow space where something new could grow. She met his eyes, and for the first time, she believed survival was more than a desperate wish. It was a choice. A broken laugh escaped her lips. "Nearly killed you with a rock back there." A faint smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I'll remind you of that next time I need cover." The humor was thin, but it lifted the weight pressing down. For a moment, the world didn't feel so unbearable. Night approached again, stars pricking holes in the endless sky. The rancher leaned against the doorway, rifle across his knees, eyes never still. She sat by the fading fire, his coat draped around her shoulders, and turned his words over in her mind. She was still here. The thought settled like a seed, fragile but alive. She would not be broken, not by loss, not by cruelty, not by the desert or the men who hunted her. She had been humiliated, stripped, nearly discarded. But now she was more than she had been yesterday. At dawn, they saddled the horses again. She carried no illusions, the danger wasn't gone. But when he placed a small revolver in her hand, her grip did not shake. She felt its weight, cold and real, and something inside her hardened. He adjusted the brim of his hat, eyes scanning the horizon. "You're coming with me. World out here's mean. But maybe, together, we can tame it." The words lingered between them, heavy with promise and unspoken truths. As they rode into the rising sun, the land stretched vast and merciless before them, but she no longer looked at it with fear. Somewhere deep inside, she understood, the journey was just beginning, and she was no longer a woman fleeing ruin. She was a survivor, carrying fire in her chest. And for the first time, the future, however uncertain, felt like it belonged to her.